So you've been out on the trails, everything's going well, and then puncture. Nobody wants to be that guy. Time for another Bossnut Basics. So, to follow along at home, today's ingredients are going to be blue paper or old rag, alcohol based wipes or an alcohol based spray, and you could use a blue towel again. We've got ourselves some tubeless sealant here. I'm using muck off, but any brand will do. We're doing a proper Ghetto tubeless conversion today, so we're using electrical tape, and we're going to use a valve cut from an old inner tube. And then lastly, we're going to need tyre levers to remove the old tyre, put on new tyres. First and foremost, remove the tape that's underneath. It's not actually tape, it's just a band to stop the inner tube getting through the spoke holes here. We're now going to get alcoholic wipe, and we're just going to run all the way around it, and we're taking out all of the grease, the dirt, everything that's been there. If you've been running your tyre for a while, it's tubed, then there will be a lot of dirt and grime. After you've spent a bit of time cleaning the rim, making sure it's completely devoid of dirt and grease and anything that's going to stop the tape from sticking, then I like to go around with a bit of blue roll, an old rag, something like that, and just make sure that all the alcohol wipe, the residue from the actual wipe itself is out. So we should have a completely dry rim for the tape to adhere to. Starting here, I'm going to get a little bit of tape, and I'm going to hold it down with my thumb, and I'm going to pull it out with a little bit of tension, and we're going to start feeding it in and along as we go. If you need to adjust it, you can lift and come back in again. There's no problem with that. Now is the time to make any adjustments so that it works in the long run. Just about to overlap. There's a little bit of tape there where my pinky is, so we're going to go further forward by one spoke, and we're going to finish about halfway in between. So once we're there, we're just going to come at it with, in my case it's a Stanley blade, but a pair of scissors, whatever you're going to use to cut the tape down. And making sure we keep the tension down and get that last sections worked in. Make sure it's exactly where you want it to be, because now is the time that you can make your adjustments. If you're not happy, back and forward a few times, because really this is the important stage. After this, you're committed, and if you haven't sealed the valves sealed and the spokes properly, it's going to just leak. We're going to need to put in some valves to stop the air escaping. We have at the top here is a purpose made valve, so it has a thick rubber bottom to it. It is hollow obviously for air to get through. Purpose made for tubeless, and if we take the cap off as well, you'll notice that the core for the valve is removable. Or you can do the complete Ghetto way of doing it, is cutting an old inner tube here and taking a valve from it. Just a quick conversation about choices of valve. Some of them are completely useless. So this one here, the first one, was a road bike. I think it was like Decathlon inner tube or something like that. But you'll notice it is a completely smooth shaft. There's no thread to it, and there's no narrowed nut. There's no way of tightening this onto the rim, so you're never going to get a perfect seal. So get rid of that one. What you're after is something like this. So it has a threaded narrow nut that can be tightened all the way down. It's a good start, but you'll also notice that this one doesn't have a removable core. Now, it's not the end of the world. If you use this, it's still doable, but what you'll have to remember is an extra step before you fully install the tyre. You need to add the sealant before you put the bead on. Spent a bit of time now, so the tape is all in place. So the last thing you want to do is put any holes in it. This is for the valve, so we need to make sure it's going to push through the tape, okay? Now, we're not talking about slicing it right open. All we want to do is start the hole to get the valve through. You can use your valve to actually pop the hole straight through it. So where we've just put our little nick in the tape, we're just going to continue by pushing through the valve. So what this allows us to do is, by using the valve to pierce through, is going to be a very tight fit. And that's quite good when it comes to the sealing point. So we're going to push that all the way in as far as we can, and then we're going to use the lock nut on the bottom side. Tighten this up by hand. It shouldn't be ridiculously tight, but you do want it to be nipped up a little bit so it doesn't leave any gaps. We want to be making sure we're putting the tyre on in the right direction, so all tyres will have a marking somewhere guiding you to the rotation. Disc here facing this direction for forward, and I'm just going to start by getting that bead and just laying it over the top of the rim, working my way around. So I'm just putting my thumb, just to give you an idea, just putting my thumb inside, I'm just running around while this hand is going to hold on to the back end. And I'm going to get to a point that potentially I'll need a lever, but not always. The bigger the tyre is, I tend to find the easier it is to get the tyre on. We've got the bead almost on, and we can pull up, push down on the rim, pull up on the edge, and we can get our way almost all the way through, but we can see we've just got this little section at the back to go. Tyre lever in underneath and behind the tyre, if you like, and grabbing onto the rim here. So just there you can see it popping through, and it just means I can lever up and that just jumps the rim, and then I can move around a little bit more, again pop it through, pop it up, and there we go. So the first part of that bead is in. See, our trail dog is very interested in what I'm doing. Oh, get the stones! Get the stones, Maggie! Get the stones! So, if you do that and start working your way around with the two hands, working your way around, and then that way it can't backtrack, and you get yourself all the way around to this section here. Again, we're going to use the tyre levers, and we're just looking to get the hooked edge underneath and catching onto the rim, and then that way we can lever up the weight and get it on. Now, what you do need to watch out for is this side is going to start working out as you start working in, so you need to keep pressure on this side, make sure that it's not popping itself out. And that's it, entirely on there now. Now it will need to jump onto the bead, so that's why we're going to give it a blast of air and get it all pumped up. So for pumping up, I'm going to be using this track pump. It has two settings, so we've got regular tyre mode, but if we flick the switch here, it has a 4 tank switch position, and what that allows us to do is pressurize the tank first and foremost, so it builds up a reservoir of air, and then a flick of the switch, it will release it all into the tyre. So it's like a compressor, gives a huge burst of air, and that should allow the tyre to seat correctly onto the rim. So tyres on and fitted now, and been pumped up to pressure to take it onto the rim. So now what we've got to do is add our sealant. We don't add the sealant until we've checked that the bead is on and everything's sealing correctly, so we don't have any obvious air leak. Valve key, and that just slots on top of the valve, and this allows us to remove the core. So we're just going to do that now, and then we can add our sealant. And it's just regular threaded as well, so we're just taking it off in a counterclockwise direction. Sealant choice is going to be a personal one. People swear by one brand or the other. I find it's best for me anyway, is a muck off. What I'm going to be doing here is I've got a massive 1 litre bottle here, and I'm going to decant it into this Stan's bottle. It's 27.5 inch wheel is what we're dealing with, so it recommends 60 to 75 millilitres, which funnily enough is the exact size of this bottle. One thing I would like to add, when you're dealing with the big bottles, make sure that the top seal is on, screw it down, and before you pour it out is give it a good shake, so that you make sure that it's a nice even proportion of the little particles that are in there for bonding up and basically plugging the hole. Sealant making its way through, and I'm just going to fill this completely. Just to start with, turn the tyre over and line the nozzle up here, and then I'm going to spin the tyre over. So that way we should have no leaks. There we go, one empty bottle. We've got our core here. Make sure that you keep the narrowed side up and the valve itself goes into. So into the tube it goes. You can hand tighten it to start with. And when you get so far, then you move over to a little tool, and we just turn it on. We're not looking to wrench it on, just to the point that it bites there. As you can see, it gets there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it up to maximum pressure for the rating of the tyre. So we go, we're at full pressure now. So now what we need to do is slosh the sealant around to make sure that all of the little gaps that the air can escape gets clogged off and covered with the sealant. We'll give it a shake, move it around for each corner if you like, so 90 degrees, and we're just making sure that the sealant is getting washed around the entire inside of the tyre, and most importantly towards the rim, because that's where the bead meets the rim and that's where you're going to have any little gaps. Chuck it on the bike, take it for a spin is a good way of sloshing around the sealant as well, and then see how it goes. It should remain up. If it doesn't, we'll get to see where the sealant leaks out and then start again. But there's no major leaks, so the tape is definitely held. Valve's definitely holding, I can't hear anything, so we're looking good. Now we just need to do it again for the rear.